Hi there, welcome to this tutorial on test-driven development for beginners from in 28 minutes. In this tutorial, we'll learn about TDD in 4 different sections. First section, we'll start with discussing what really TDD is. What is test-driven development? Next, we would move on to the basics of TDD. We would understand what are the 3 steps in doing TDD. What is red, green, refactor? And after that, we would move on to the 3 laws of TDD. In section 3, we'll start our playing with TDD. We'll try 2 examples, 2 very simple examples. Example 1 and example 2 with test-driven development. And the section 4 is continue your journey with TDD. We'll have a quick revision about TDD and we will see what are the things that you need to think about when you want to continue with test-driven development. Okay, what are you waiting for? Let's get started. I'm using an IDE called Eclipse. Let's get started with the first section. What is test-driven development? Test-driven development is a form of development where we write test first and the code later. You're right. You write the test first and the code later. What? Am I speaking it right? Yes. You write the test first and then the code that makes the test to pass. Complete change from how we do development. The way we usually do development is we write the code and then we check whether it's working fine. This is exactly a reversal of that. We write the test first and then we write the code. Why should we do this? The main reason why we should do this is because when we write the test, we start thinking about code from outside in. So we would start thinking about how we would want to make use of the code. That's proven to lead to better design. That's the next reason why test-driven development is used frequently. Is because when I write the test first, I'm sure it's failing. So I have more confidence in the test that I write. So all the tests that I wrote would have failed sometime and are now succeeding. That means they are really good tests. In section 2, we'll try and understand the basics of TDD. There are 3 steps in TDD: red, green, and refactor. What is red? Red is writing the failing test. Red is the place where I write some test which fails, a small test that fails, and it's called red because red is a signal of failure. So the first step in TDD is red. That's writing a failing test. That's signaled by writing a red. It's called red. The next step is writing some code to make the test pass. So that's called the green phase. The green phase is when I write some code, I make the test to pass. So that's the green phase. The last step is refactor. Once I have some working code, I would refactor. What do I want to aim at? I want to aim at achieving the 4 principles of simple design. I want to make sure that the code is as clear as possible without any duplication. Those are the 3 steps in TDD: red, green, refactor. So you start with a failing test, you write the code to make it pass, and then you refactor it to make it meet the 4 principles of simple design. Those are the 3 steps in TDD. Now that we understand the 3 steps in TDD, don't worry if you don't clearly get this. We'll really practice this and understand this red, green, refactor steps in detail. We'll move on to the 3 laws of TDD. The 3 basic laws of TDD. We can add a 4th one also very soon. But basically there are 3 laws. The first one is write code only when there's a test failing. So that's called new code only on the red bar. Red bar is a failing test. So on a failing test, write the code. Put another way, new code is written only when there's a test fail. The next law is simplest code to make the test fail. I have some working code. I'm now thinking of the next condition to write. You're not supposed to write 5 or 6 different failing conditions. The way you need to approach it is write the next simplest condition that will make the code fail. The third law is write the simplest possible code to make the failing test succeed. These are the 3 laws of TDD. That's basically write new code only on red bar, write the simplest possible test, and write the simplest possible code to make it pass. That's it. So it's A, new code only on red bar. B, write the simplest possible test to make the code fail. write the simplest possible code to make the test pass. I would add in another law usually, the fourth law of Ranga, you can call it. It's these 3 steps should not take more than 2 minutes. If you are taking more than 2 minutes in doing these 3 steps, red, green, refactor, then there is something wrong. If you are able to do this within 2 minutes, actually I saw people who can do all 3 within 30 seconds. But let's say 2 minutes. If you are not able to do it, then you are doing something wrong. So aim to be able to complete one cycle of red, green, refactor in at least about 2 minutes. So those are the 3 laws of TDD for me. Let's now get started with playing with TDD. Let's start with the example. The first problem is truncate A in first 2 positions. In this string, A is in the first position, so I truncate it. The output is B. Here, the first 2 positions are A, so both A's are truncated in C. Here, the first 2 positions are truncated, and the rest are left as it is. And in this particular example, the first 2 positions are M and N, so they are not truncated, so the output is the same as the input. So that's basically the problem that we would want to write code to. What I have in here is an Eclipse environment. So I have Eclipse installed and I have a small sample project open. The installation guide in the description would help you to install Eclipse and get ready with it. Let's get started with writing our first test-driven development program. As we said earlier, we would start with creating a test. So I would go ahead and start creating a test. So I would say create a JUnit test case. I would click next. I would want to create a JUnit test. I would want to create it in the test folder. The test should always be created in the test folder and the source in the source folder. And I would put in a package that in 28 minutes.tdd. I'm going to write a utility method for string. Let's call it string helper. And because this is a test class, I'll call it string test class. And I'll leave it as it is. Please do add. It's asking if I want to add JUnit 4 to the build path. I would want to go ahead and add it. And I click finish. And we have the first test. So what we have now is our string helper test. First thing, if you're not familiar with JUnit, then please go ahead and learn what JUnits are. JUnit is a prerequisite for this particular thing. Without JUnits, without knowledge of JUnits, it's very difficult to do TDD. That out of the way, let's get started with writing our first test. So it's failing, so I would remove it. And the thing which I would want to test is I would want to write a method which would truncate A in 2 positions. So I'll for now just say test truncate A in positions. I would want to implement the method in string helper class, so I'll create a string helper class. This class is not yet there, but I'll just go ahead and use it. String helper. There will be a compilation error. Let's look at how to solve it a little later. And then I would want to do string helper dot truncate A in first positions. This is exactly what I want to do, and I would want to pass in an input. I would get the actual output. I'm not really writing anything right now. I'm just creating this string helper, calling the method truncate A in first 2 positions, passing some input. We'll discuss what the input should be, and I'm getting the output which it gives. You know that it's the input is string, the input parameter is string, and the output parameter is also string. And after that, in any JUnit test, I would assert the actual output. So first is the expected output. So expected output. Let's just say it's some other string, comma actual output. So this is a typical JUnit. The first question usually is which condition do we pick to write? So we have about 5 conditions. Which of these 5 conditions should we? Let's pick up the first condition because I think that's one of the simpler ones. The condition is when I pass in ABCD, the output should be BCD. So I would pass in ABCD, the output should be BCD. So that's the first condition. Before this, let's get started with getting rid of the compilation error. So I'll go ahead and press Ctrl 1. It would ask create class string helper. I'll go ahead and create it. Source should be created in source main Java. So I'll change to source main Java and TDD and string helper. I'll remain remaining settings as they are and click finish. So it would create the string helper. So that's good. So created the class for us. Now let's create the method as well. Method also is there now. So I would just go ahead and rename it properly. So string input, and I would return none. So now let's go ahead and run this, and as expected, the test fails because the output from there is empty, but we are expecting BCD. So let's now write the simplest implementation to make this test pass. So the input that we would get is ABCD, and the output should be BCD. Let's think about the simplest possible implementation. You can pause the video here and see if you can think of a simplest possible solution than what I'm coming up with. The simplest possible solution I can think of is replace A with empty. So I'll do that. So I'll do input dot replace all. I know this is not the best possible solution for the problem in hand when I look at it from a complete perspective. But in test-driven development, we try and implement the simplest possible solution at that moment. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll replace everything in the input. I'll replace all A's with empty. Let's run the test. Success. Obviously, this test succeeded. Let's go for the next condition. A, C, D, and C, D. I didn't go through the refactor phase because we just had one test, and I think when we just have one test, it's very difficult to see what's getting duplicated. So I'll really wait for two tests before now there's a duplicate. I'll go ahead and give a better name to the test. A in first. A first. I'll give A in the output. Let's see success. This all does work. Now let's go ahead and try the next test. Should be? No. Before that, we need to refactor. I see some duplicate code in here. Let's actually move this string helper out, and I'll remove this. So now we have one common string helper class which is for everything, and I can something of this kind. See if you like it. If you like it, go ahead and do this. If you don't want to do this, that's fine too. So this is kind of the simplest possible test that we can come up with. Now it's very clear and easy to understand for me. But if you don't like this, probably you can create a variable as well. I mean, it's more of a matter of preference, I guess. So let's go ahead and write the next test, which is BACD. And when I pass in BACD, the output should be BCD. This would also succeed because A is only in second position and gets replaced properly. Success. Now let's go ahead and add the next test, which is AA, and some of these times these descriptions is getting little too monotonous to write because you can look at it and see what this string is. So some of the times probably it's a good idea just to say 4. But when you look at it, you understand what's happening there. But it's again a matter of preference, I would say. So let's run this test. This test fails. So one which fails, the test which fails is A in first 4 positions. So let's go ahead and see what's good. how do we make it success? So the simplest solution I can think of is to split the string into two and replace A only in the first. So let's go ahead and implement that. So first what I would do is string first gas is equal to input dot substring of 0 comma I want to get two characters 0 comma 2 and string is equal to substring. I want to get the entire substring from the second character, so I'll do that, and now I can replace all and then do a concat rest. Okay, this looks good. Let's go with this. Okay, that's really good. It works. Let's see if it works for MNAA. That's the next guy. MNAA, and let's see if it's. That's really good. It's working well. Let's go ahead and quickly write the boundary conditions. So let's see if when I pass in one character, I would need to get in. This condition is A. See what happens. Yep. Obviously, it gives the error. So if input dot length less than 2, I'm doing a substring 2 here and do an exception. So I would want to check input dot length less than 2. Then I think I can just replace it and give it that. So dot replace A. Oops, our test is wrong. Should have it. That's very good. We can go ahead and write the next test. Which is when I have this. Okay, that's good. So I guess that's our example one. Let's see if we have the code right. I think it's good enough. It's very clear. The only thing is probably there's a little bit of duplication in here. What replace A with probably you can pull out into a method. Again, it's a choice. I can't think of any clear refactoring. A lot of times I've skipped refactoring when I instantly my instinct says there is no need for refactoring. But when you get started, it's better to always write down the steps. So take a piece of paper, write down red, green, refactoring, and always keep refactoring. A lot of times when a fresher or a first time TDD trier gives TDD a try, the thing which usually gets missed last part. So always be careful about it, and also make sure that you are taking small steps. Don't write big tests. Write a simple test, get it working. Write another simple test, get it working. Write another simple test. Let's end our example one. Let's now continue with the second example of playing with TDD. The example which we will write is to check if the first two and the last two characters in this string are the same. So what we want to write is a method to which I pass a string as input, and the output is whether the first two and the last two characters of that particular string are the same. So let's take a quick example. In this string, the first two characters are AB, the last two characters are also AB. So that's good. True. In this string, the first two characters are AB, the last two characters are BA. So that's not true. So it would return back a value false. An empty string and a string of length 1 would return false because their two characters are not even there. A string of type AB, anything of length 2 will always return true because the first two and the last two characters are the same. And here it's AB, first two characters, BC, last two characters, so it's false. Let's get started. Let's take the simplest cases first. I would start with the empty string. So let's go ahead and write our first test. I'll copy over all the test conditions. Let's write our first test. Our first and last chars underscore. I would want to start with testing an empty condition, and I would want to call string helper. Our first and last two characters the same. The method doesn't exist right now, but let's go ahead and pass in an empty string to it, and the actual output is this. Actual output. And what we want to do is we want to check first is the expected value. As usual, the expected value for this is false. So the actual output should actually be a boolean, and then I would pass in the actual. So the expected output here is false. I'm checking whether the actual output and the expected outputs match. So let's go ahead and create this method. The great thing about test-driven development is you make full use of all the refactoring features which are present in Eclipse. When there's a compilation error, Eclipse offers you suggestions on how to fix this. If you press Control 1 or Command 1, the options come up. Control 1, it's saying create the method. Please do. And it creates the method. Great thing is it understands the method name, it understands the boolean, which is return type, it understands the type of the input parameter. So it creates me this default method. I would go ahead and change the name to input, and I'll remove it to do. And for a start, I'll just return false and run the test. Green bar. Let's run the next test. I would want to pass in a string with one character. So I'll pass in A, and the expected output in this particular scenario also is good. Now that we have two tests, I'll see if there is anything that I can improve in the code that I have. I might prefer actually not to really have a variable for actual output because it's quite a simple thing. So I'll just inline that, Alt-Shift-I, Control-Shift-I. Go ahead and inline the variable. You can also do the inline by using right-click, REFACTOR. Now, you have two simple tests. Let's go ahead and add more tests. The next test we would want to add is two characters, right? But the expected output for two characters is not false, but true. Let's run this test and see if it fails. That's great. So, what's the simplest way we can fix this particular thing? For now, I know that if the length of the input is less than 2, then it's always false. And for greater than true, let's return a true back. So if it's less than 2, then if it's one character or empty, then it's false. That I already knew. And then I'll return true to just make this particular condition. Let's see. Okay, that's great. Success. Let's go ahead and create one more test for the next condition. I would pass in AB. The expected output is false. And run the test to see. Oops. That's expected. Let's go ahead and fix it. So, now, for this particular condition, we have the first two characters and the last two characters different. So, what we have to really do now is we want to get the first two characters, last two characters, and check whether they are equal. So, how do I do that? Probably I can use a string.substring. String first chars is equal to input substring. I would start with 0 to go for two characters. So this gives me the first two characters. And to get the last two characters for the string, I can do a substring. But where do I want to do the substring from? To get the last two characters, let's say the string is A, B, C, D, E, F. The length of this is 6. And the indexing goes something like this, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The length of this is 6. I would want to start from 4 and pick up this as well. So I have to do a substring of 4. So that's length minus 2. So I'll do a substring input dot length minus 2. This picks up the first two chars. This picks up the last two chars. And I just need to return if first two chars are equals last two chars. Okay, that's perfect. That's good. So let's see if we are able to run all the other test conditions as well. I'll be a little lazy now and I will not create separate methods for them. I'll just go ahead and use the same methods to check whether everything's working fine. So for I'm doing this because I'm sure that these conditions would succeed. For AAA, the thing is true. For ABCAB, the value should be one improvement we should have made a lot earlier in this particular thing is using the assert true and assert false methods. I should have used assert false because that's much easier code to read. Even here, rather use assert false. You can go ahead and use the same thing in the other methods as well. I'll leave that as an exercise for you. Succeeds. If you look at the string helper class, use to command. I think the code is very readable. I don't know if I would want to make any changes. If you can see a few improvements, do go ahead and refactor it. So that's our first attempt at TDD. We learned two different examples how to use TDD to do those. In this last section on TDD, we will discuss what are the things you need to do to continue working with TDD. As we discussed until now, TDD is completely different from what we are used to doing. So it does take some time to get used. I mean, it's not easy to get started with TDD because it's completely different. I have about 8 years of experience before I picked up TDD. And the first few months, I felt like hell. But the great thing was I had a mentor. I had a really good guide who helped me to learn all the basics of TDD and who made sure I was following TDD even when I was struggling with it. And that's a phase everybody who starts with TDD goes through. Test-driven development is not easy to learn, but once you learn TDD, you'd never go back to any other approach. TDD leads to really good design, very clean code, and you'd start thinking from the outside in, and that's a really good perspective to have when you are writing code. Get a mentor. That's the first advice I would really give to anybody who would want to start TDD. Second thing is have patience. It takes about 2 months, 2 to 3 months before you start seeing the results. So have a little bit of patience, get a mentor, practice. In the description, I have given links to a few katas which would be really useful for you to follow and practice and learn more about test-driven development. And as with anything that you do, you would only improve when you are having fun. So go ahead, have fun, and good luck with TDD.